Hello there, and welcome to a Thursday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening, and that app is sponsored by the fine folks at Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics to lead you into your holiday weekend. Happy birthday, America. We'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call or text that number. Promise I have not started celebrating our nation's birthday early. Just stumbled over the number that I've said every day for years. Let's start with the NHL, shall we? And the Avs did something. Now, if you are expecting prime Brent Burns in Colorado, you're going to be disappointed. Brent Burns is 21 years into his career. He is 40 years old. He is not the player he was in his heyday with the San Jose Sharks. But there was a similar conversation around a player about 25 years ago. Almost exactly 25 years ago. Who's a defenseman like Brent Burns. After 21 seasons in the NHL, he came to Colorado in search of the greatest achievement that any athlete could get, and that is hoisting Lord Stanley's Cup. That 40-year-old defenseman was named Ray Bourque. So Brent Burns is coming to the Colorado Avalanche to try and do the same thing that Ray Bourque was able to do. And that is finally add that key piece of accomplishment to his resume. Probably a Hall of Fame resume for Brent Burns. So just the story alone of Brent Burns coming to the Colorado Avalanche, it's already fun. Right? And people are going to be talking about it. People talked to him about it today when he met with the media. He's hoping that history repeats itself. Avs fans are hoping that history repeats itself. But as far as Brent Burns, the player, here's what the Avalanche are getting. Even though he is physically imposing as a human being, he's not a guy that's going to throw his body around to block shots or to hit other hockey players. That's not his game. He's always been more of an offensive defenseman, but as he has advanced through his career, he relies on his skills more than his size and strength. What he is he is a very good passer of the puck. Great on breakouts, which we know that the Colorado Avalanche, that's part of the way they play. They like to get out of the defensive zone in a hurry. Brent Burns can help them do that. And he's going to be paired with a young player that you think the Avs have something in Sam Malinsky, but you're not entirely sure. And the two of them are going to be paired together. You know what the Avalanche acquired last night? They acquired perhaps a replacement for Eric Johnson. What Eric Johnson was, and will speak in grandiose fashion, what Eric Johnson was to the Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche, maybe Brent Burns can be to the next championship Avs team. He's a veteran presence. He's great in the dressing room. He's going to be highly motivated. He can be a mentor for Sam Malinsky. But here's perhaps the best part about Brent Burns. If you know the Colorado Avalanche, the best thing about Brent Burns should be music to your ears. He doesn't miss games. 925 straight nights he has shown up for work. Does he do the job as well as he used to? No. He does some things well, but he shows up. Maybe this is the kiss of death. And maybe the unstoppable force is meeting the immovable object, because it seems like we're perpetually talking about Avalanche injuries. But this is a guy who you can count on to be on the ice every single night. And for a team like the Colorado Avalanche, who do still have some questions, a big question about a player in particular and his health, it's nice to add somebody that you can count on being in there. No questions. Everybody else on the Avalanche roster, who knows? But Brent Burns, he's going to be in there every single night. And at $1 million, you can, I mean, what more could you ask for $1 million? So I like the addition. I like the addition from the Avalanche. They needed to bolster their depth in every facet, right? Forward group, defenseman. They do that with Brent Burns. This defenseman market has kind of gotten away from the Avalanche, I think. You see some of the contracts. Cody Ceci getting $4.5 million. Dumoulin getting $4 million. Keandre Miller signing a massive extension in Carolina. Like, the defenseman market has gotten away from the Avalanche to the point that this was the most logical type of move they were going to make. It's not bringing back Bo Byram. But you have Taves, you have Makar, you have Girard, you have Manson still. You signed Sam Malinsky, you have Brent Burns there. Chris McFarland said today he's going to talk to all of the pending UFAs, including Eric Johnson. But this was a piece of business the Avalanche need to get done one way or another. And just the free agent market got away from the Avs. It got away from a lot of people. I saw quotes from Steve Yzerman that is like, half of the guys on our wish list never made it to free agency. What are we supposed to do? Brock Besser re-upped with Vancouver. Vegas and Toronto consummated the Mitch Marner deal before free agency even opened. Like, the free agent market that wasn't bountiful in terms of talent already was like done within the first 12 hours. The one remaining notable free agent went off the board today. And he was linked to the Colorado Avalanche, and that's Nikolai Ehlers, the winger from Winnipeg, is now going to Carolina. It's a 6-year deal, $8.5 million. It would have taken the Avs only a little financial maneuvering to afford that. They could have afforded that. but he would certainly have a more prominent role in Carolina because of what happened with Mikko Rantanen. Nikolai Ehlers going to a place where he would be featured, and I guess I'm a little surprised that the number is 8.5. I thought he could surpass 9. So you look at it and go, maybe the Avs could afford that. Maybe they could have. But Ehlers is going to be a little bit more relied on in Carolina than he would in Colorado. And look, Marty Necas is a better player. All right. And this isn't revisionist history. I've said this. Marty Necas had 20 more points than Nikolai Ehlers last year. He's had a track record of being healthier. He's 3 years younger. He's entering his prime. There's no doubt that Marty Necas, getting him into an extension, would be a better thing for the Avs to do than to sign Nikolai Ehlers. Now, there are questions of how the Avalanche are going to acquire the rest of their depth pieces, because the whole idea behind the Avs being linked to Ehlers is they would then flip Marty Necas to another team. But if you just took a Ehlers and Necas, I like Nikolai Ehlers, but Necas is a better player. So now the path forward for the Avs is abundantly clear. Get Marty Necas to sign an extension. I don't know what the impasse is. I have a hard time believing, you could say this about the NBA or Major League Baseball, but when it comes to the NFL and the NHL, Colorado is a desirable destination. People want to play in Colorado. So I don't know how much stock I put into the idea that Marty Necas didn't love the start, but he did just get here. I mean, the idea that he's going to spend his prime years, that his prime years are going to be spent with whatever team he signs his next contract with. I understand that maybe he's not eager to immediately put pen to paper. And also, given his age, given the stage of his career, and given where he's playing, I think he and his representation have to look at this and say, we have a chance to really cash in here. I know it's a loaded free agent class next year. Eichel, McDavid, among others, set to become free agents. But if Nate is playing next to Nathan MacKinnon this year, has a great season, his asking price is going to go up. So I don't know that this is Marty Necas isn't happy in Colorado, doesn't want to stay in Colorado. I think this is Marty Necas looking at this next contract as being one of his last big paydays. And the biggest payday he's going to get. But the Avs need to sign him up. Because without this, Nikolai Ehlers plan B stuff, I don't like the idea of the Avalanche trading another pending UFA. Marty Necas right now is not a better player than Mikko Rantanen, and it's reasonable to assume that the next guy that the Avs would get in a Marty Necas trade would not be as good as Marty Necas. This is a top 6 guy. This is your top winger with the question marks surrounding Landeskog, maybe some lingering anxiety about Valeri Nichushkin, although this year, no reason to complain about Val. But this is your top winger, Marty Necas. Whatever Gabriel Landeskog is going to be for 82 games, he's not going to be better than Marty Necas. They need him on the power play. They need him on that first line. So the path forward is clear. Whatever the impasse here, whatever the reason, Chris McFarland's got to push through and get this item of business done. Because if you look at the Avs cap table, right now they are set to have $30 million in cap space next year. Now, that's going to go quickly because they have a lot of depth pieces that are set to be free agents. They have a couple RFAs, some unrestricted free agents, but the important thing is McKinnon, Landeskog, Nichushkin, Lehkonen, Makar, Taves, Mackenzie Blackwood, Gerard, and I believe Manson. And then to a lesser extent, Parker Kelly, all under contract for next season. Not this coming season, but the next season when Marty Necas' new contract would kick in. So the Avs aren't going to be a team that is going to be hunting for difference-making players or needing difference-making players. The core of their team is intact for the next few years. And they have a lot of space. I'm failing to see why the Avalanche can't get this item of business done. But then again, I couldn't quite understand why they couldn't get the Mikko Rantanen contract done. But I think there is, and Brock Nelson, by the way, under contract. But the Mikko Rantanen trade, there were some other reasons why. They could have afforded Mikko Rantanen, even at $12 million. Is Necas going to get 12? Guy have a big year. Guy have a really big year. But he's going to make more. Put him somewhere between Mikko Rantanen and Nikolai Ehlers. Probably 10. But the Avs can afford him. But that will be a storyline throughout this season. But also, as far as, you have Marty Necas under contract for this upcoming season. So as far as the Avs in the 2025-2026 season, yes, the contract negotiation with Marty Necas will be a story. But the biggest key for me, for the Avs, it's Gabe Landeskog. For this year's team. Moving forward, it's are you going to get Necas signed? For now, it's Landeskog. What's he going to look like for 82 games? If his body can hold out, he's obviously in tremendous shape. I'm saying the surgery, the injury, all that kind of stuff. Can he hold up over 82 games and be the Gabriel Landeskog that you saw for a short time against the Dallas Stars? If he is, the Avs are the favorite to get out of the West. They have to be. And the biggest threat on either side of the equation, either side of the NHL, East or West, biggest threat to take down Florida. If he's not, if he can't hold up, then now they start to fade back a little bit. And now Vegas adding Mitch Marner, Dallas still would be a factor. Edmonton. I don't love what Edmonton did this offseason, but they still have McDavid and they still have Draisaitl for now. So Landeskog, the story this year, but in the background, the Avs trying to get this Marty Necas deal. With Nikolai Ehlers off the table, there's nobody else they can turn to in free agency. But as far as the additions go, Brent Burns, $1 million plus incentives for 1 year. He's available, and he's a decent offensive defenseman that you're going to, if he's a better version of Eric Johnson, great pickup. And that's really all they need on the blue line. Because we're talking about the third D pairing here. Take your thoughts on the addition of Burns and the Avs losing out on Nikolai Ehlers, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, could the Denver Nuggets lose one of, if not the most prized acquisition that they have made this offseason. Happy birthday, America. Celebrate big with a chance at $5,000 in the Red, White, and Win giveaway. Just head to extrasports1300.com now to enter this national contest for, again, your chance to Red, White, and Win. See what we did there? $5,000. Contest sponsored locally by H&H Tires and Window Nation. If you're watching the show on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300, you can comment right there, and I can do this fancy thing that I'm going to do with Brandon's comment. On X, Brandon says, Jonas Valanciunas really going to do this to us, huh? So, developing situation. Basket News, which is a basketball news outlet in Europe, is reporting that Greek basketball powerhouse Olympiakos is trying to lure Jonas Valanciunas out of the NBA into Europe. Now, you wonder about the validity of this. The writer of the story is Lithuanian. This is a well plugged in news outlet in Europe. The reason why the nationality of the writer is, I think, important here is because Jonas Valanciunas is also Lithuanian. So if there is somebody on the European basketball beat that might have some connections to somebody who plays for the Lithuanian national team, could be this guy. But this story has been obviously picked up by American writers, Mark Stein being one of them, kind of confirming that this might be a possibility. Now, I don't know all the, to me, it sounds a lot like exit fees in college football. Right? I got to imagine there's a buyout that has to take place, which is going to add to Olympiakos' bottom line here. They are one of the bigger basketball teams in Europe. So can they afford it? How much do they desire him? And if Jonas Valanciunas, I mean, just because he's not LeBron or KD or Giannis doesn't mean player empowerment doesn't apply to him. If there's a will, there's a way here. So if Jonas Valanciunas wants to go over to Europe and play for Olympiakos, by the way, somebody tell me the exchange rate, 12 million euros compared to the $10.4 million he's going to make from the Denver Nuggets this season. He's going to go. It's going to get done. Like, the idea that the NBA is going to fight tooth and nail to keep Olympiakos from getting Jonas Valanciunas, like, I don't see it. So if he wants to go, I think he's gone. And in that way, it's like college football exit fees. Have you heard of one team that didn't ultimately make the move that they wanted to make? Maybe Florida State. But everyone, and who knows what happens with them. My point here is, I don't see how, if Jonas Valanciunas wants to go play in Greece, how he's not going to be playing in Greece next year. Coincidentally, there were some rumors around Dario Saric that he wanted to go play in Europe. Now, that news would be received a little bit better by Nuggets fans than this piece of news. Jonas Valanciunas may not have been the most significant addition to the Denver Nuggets. I think that Cam Johnson is certainly that, given what his role will be. But I think Jonas Valanciunas was the favorite addition of Nuggets fans because what it represents for when Nikola Jokic would go to the bench. And also, by the way, seeing Jokic and Valanciunas on the floor together would be fun. So this would certainly take the wind out of the sails of the Denver Nuggets, who have had, outside of Houston, the best offseason of any NBA team. Atlanta had a pretty good offseason. Detroit did. I put Houston landing KD and then what the Nuggets did right after that. You know, John Wallace, the co-GM, that's not his actual title, but that's just kind of his role. talked about relationships, and I'll bring up him saying that as it pertains to another Nuggets topic a little bit later. But he talked about how important relationships are in the NBA. Well, hopefully someone in that front office has a relationship with Jonas Valanciunas. Or maybe get Nikola Jokic off of his horse and get him on the phone. Here's where having the best player in the world, who's also European, can connect on a different level with Jonas Valanciunas and say, hey, dude, I want you here. Stay. Win a title. There hasn't, for a while, Jonas Valanciunas has not played meaningful basketball games. He has a chance to do that here. But somebody's got to get on the horn and do this, because this would be a blow to the Denver Nuggets. No doubt about it. Now, does it make their offseason all of a sudden horrendously bad? No. Because, again, the Cam Johnson move, trading Porter for Johnson, is the key that unlocked so much for the Denver Nuggets. But you see the feeding frenzy that there is to get bigs. I mean, even one that I don't think that the Nuggets would have been particularly interested in DeAndre Ayton's off the board. Like, if they lose Valanciunas, to say nothing of what it does with, they would have to take back Saric, right? This trade actually can't be consummated, and now it's being apparently roped into a bigger trade regarding a number of teams. But the Nuggets now are in a situation where if this happens before, Sunday? And I don't know how, when this decision might come down, but they might have to take back Saric. And now they're back to square one in regards to that position. And can you imagine if Dario Saric is on the Nuggets bench this year? But look around. The Nuggets got one of the better bigs that were available, and that's why it was such a significant move. To me, let's just play this out. Let's say that Valanciunas goes. It's even more of a reason why the Denver Nuggets should be in on Al Horford. And I have been hearing that the Nuggets, maybe not to the level that the Lakers and the Warriors were in on Horford, but they were interested in Horford. They had the money, the exception at $14 million to make it happen. I mean, you almost have to up the ante, don't you? I mean, if the Nuggets are some kind of a dark horse sleeper team to land Al Horford, they got to jump to the front of the line. They can't have Dario Saric backing up Nikola Jokic. And I don't know what DeAndre Jordan's up to, but and he's a great guy, but no more off seasons of announcing DeAndre Jordan's going to be back. We're past that. So I kind of equate it to the Avs with this Nikolai Ehlers thing. Like, is there another option out there for the Denver Nuggets if they lose Valanciunas? Yes. But that's not preferred over keeping the guy that you acquired. Get Marty Necas's extension done. Whatever he's contemplating, assuage his fears and get him signed. Same thing with Jonas Valanciunas. I'd like Al Horford and see what this offseason has done to me. I'm now looking at it. Nuggets should get Horford and Valanciunas for their bench. But yeah, Al Horford could be an option here, but you got the better option. Stylistically, Jonas Valanciunas is a fit. he has more to give as an NBA player, as a basketball player in general. So somebody convince this guy to stay. But this is kind of a stunning story. I mean, there's a chance that this could have been out there when Jonas Valanciunas was staring down the face of another year in Sacramento. And it's just coming to light now. Or maybe Olympiakos is making a late push, whatever it might be. We don't know where Jonas Valanciunas' head is at because he just got traded to the Nuggets 48 hours ago. I think that there's a chance here that he was contemplating a move before the trade. And now that he's in Denver, he might be like, you know what? I think I'll stick around. I like this place better. I mean, the guy's only, it's basically a 1-year deal. Would the Olympiakos offer be there after this season? Because I don't think Jonas Valanciunas is going to spend more than a year in Denver. So we'll see. As we say in the business, it's a developing story. But newly acquired Nuggets center Jonas Valanciunas is seriously contemplating leaving the NBA and joining up with, or it's not Olympiakos, it's Panathinaikos. Sorry. Apologies to the diehard Greek basketball fans. It's not Denver that he's contemplating going to. That's the important thing here. 719-247-1313. How would Jonas Valanciunas jumping the Atlantic go over with you? How would you calibrate your thoughts on this Nuggets offseason? And how desperate would they be to go out and find somebody else if Valanciunas were to leave? 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Pro rodeo champions from the U.S. and Canadian circuits, plus national champions from Mexico, are all coming to Colorado Springs next week for the NFR Open at the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo, July 8th through the 12th, with payouts at over $1 million. The competition will be fierce. Get your tickets at pikespeakorbust.org. Panathinaikos, I should have just went with Olympiakos. It's easier for me to say. One of the premier European basketball teams trying to lure Jonas Valanciunas away from the NBA, offering him a contract worth about 12 million euros. Now, Vinny Benedetto, Nuggets beat writer for the Gazette, hopped on a Jake Fisher report. Jake Fisher, I believe, writes for Bleacher Report, essentially saying that the trade will still be consummated. And I think that's just because of time. Everything that is being talked about Kevin Durant and Valanciunas and the Porter Johnson swap, all these trades that have gone on since NBA free agency opened, they all become official in the next few days. So unless Valanciunas is hopping onto a plane tomorrow, he's going to become a member of the Denver Nuggets. That's what it looks like. And then the buyout and all of that kind of stuff will then be directed to the Denver Nuggets. The question I have is, has Jonas Valanciunas' mind changed at all? Is this something that was offered to him when he was with the Kings? And given that he was entering the last year of his contract, playing for a team that's doesn't have any grand plans this upcoming season, could he have looked at that and said, yeah, maybe I'll go, closer to home. I played 13 seasons in the NBA. I've done a lot. Now I want to go cash in a little bit. I want to go play. And if you've seen some of those games, it's crazy. Remember when Nikola Jokic said, I played in Serbia, brother? Like, you've seen the videos. The money's better in the NBA. The notoriety in the NBA is probably a little bit better. As far as game day atmosphere, NBA cities don't hold a candle to what goes on in Europe. So Valanciunas, maybe looking at it like, might be a good move for me. But then he got traded to Denver. Then he got traded to a team that is on the short list of title contenders, playing alongside, behind, on the same team as the best basketball player in the world. This is where Josh Kroenke's comments about the free agent pitch being pretty easy when you have Nikola Jokic, here's where it could come into play. Right? Here's where it's useful. So we'll see if not that I was talking about the ability of Ben Tenzer and John Wallace to keep players from bolting for Europe, but here we are. Another thing that is being put on the desk of the Nuggets' new front office. Now, does it take the Nuggets out of the running for an NBA title next year? No. But I look at it very similar again to the Marty Necas thing with the Avalanche. If the Avalanche were to trade Marty Necas for lesser players, I could still see a path for the Colorado Avalanche to get out of the Western Conference. But now it's a little bit more murky. Now it's Edmonton, it's Dallas, it's Vegas. And for the Nuggets, if they were to lose out on Jonas Valanciunas, silver lining, they would still have gotten rid of Dario Saric. Setting aside the Al Horford part of this, they'd probably have to go bargain bin shopping, just given the dearth of bigs who are still available. Now, are they definitely the biggest threat to OKC? I couldn't say definitely. Now, Houston creeping in a little bit more. The Nuggets are still on that list. This would not be a death blow to the Nuggets' championship chances. It would be a blow to morale. And I talked about this. The biggest thing that Josh Kroenke in this front office has changed in the last few days is the feeling around this basketball team. This is the best anyone has felt about the Nuggets since they won a title. And that would certainly take a hit if Valanciunas were to go. He's not an insignificant addition. The Nuggets would have to change some things. They'd still be in that mix. But to put them above Houston and Minnesota as the biggest threat to OKC, I don't know that you could say it with as much certainty. Because those non-Jokic minutes, while it's always going to be a thing, the Nuggets with Valanciunas had a real chance to mitigate that damage better than they maybe ever have before and give the Nuggets a capable, competent bench unit. Without him, I don't know who you bring in, and now you're putting more on De'Ron Holmes coming off of a season-long injury in effectively his rookie year. They'd have some things to figure out, but I wouldn't completely dismiss them as the biggest threat to OKC if Valanciunas were to walk. So, and here I was worried that I was going to have nothing to monitor sports-wise over the holiday weekend. Now that Nikolai Ehlers signed in Carolina and NHL free agency is pretty much over. Nope, got this. And we'll see if anything else. It's really hot right now. It's trending, so we'll see if anybody else weighs in on where these things are going. And I'll take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Perhaps something that we will be monitoring over the holiday weekend is which will be the next pro athlete to get in trouble for gambling. The list is growing. First, you had Malik Beasley, former Denver Nugget. And now you have this pitcher for the Cleveland Guardians who is being investigated. Luis Ortiz is his name. And what they are investigating is the fact that there were a couple of first pitches that got an unusually high amount of action on them. Essentially, the bet, will the first pitch be a ball or a strike? And there's a video circulating social media of one of the pitches in question. And it was like a Mark Wohlers. Like, remember when Mark Wohlers all of a sudden just lost his ability to pitch? Like, it looked like that. The first pitch of a third inning was about as bad of a pitch as you could get. It was so far, it bounced, it was well outside. And that's the thing. And maybe you could, if you're worried at all about the integrity of the game, just know that some of these alleged offenders, they're not great actors. So it seems like they can be sniffed out pretty quick. But to be fair, these are allegations, and Terry Rozier, who is just under investigation in the NBA, did nothing wrong. But now you have Malik Beasley and you have Luis Ortiz. And I think I know where this is heading. Where this is heading is a potential ban of prop bets. And if you're a bettor, you know that those can be traps. Those in same game parlays. That's how they get you. And I'm not disparaging, like I do prop bets. I'm not anti-sports gambling. But whether it's Jonte Porter, whether it's Terry Rozier, whether it's now Malik Beasley or Luis Ortiz, it always seems to come back to prop betting. Will this pitch be a ball or a strike? Will they go over or under this? If this keeps happening, I'm not saying because of Ortiz and Beasley and Jonte Porter that this is going to happen. But if this keeps happening, I think you're going to see the authorities step in, and it will be money lines and point spreads and futures that we will be able to bet on in the future. But and you maybe seen the videos of Malik Beasley, don't look good. We can find the exact games in question, and you just look, and it might, in Terry Rozier's case, he just wasn't very good in those games. Like, they didn't find any wrongdoing. And it could be the case with Malik Beasley, and Luis Ortiz just could have had a terrible pitch. But you sync up the reports with the video, and you're like, oh my goodness. It looks bad. Now, the betting thing is probably the biggest issue Malik Beasley has now, but it's not the only one. Have you read some of this stuff? So the Detroit Free Press wrote a story that he was sued in Detroit for failing to pay over $14,000 in rent. By the way, the place he was living in Detroit was owned essentially by Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cavs. The real estate arm of his empire owned the building that Malik Beasley refused to pay $14,000 in rent. Somebody go look up Malik Beasley's career stats this past season against the Cavs. Maybe Dan Gilbert trying to get back at him. Beasley was sued for another over $7,000 by the same high-rise apartment building. His barber won a case worth nearly $27,000. His barber sued him and won $26,827. I don't think I have spent, I'll go pretty high, $10,000 my entire life, $5,000, $8,000. My mom cut my hair for a lot of years. I don't think I've even spent over $1,000 on haircuts. And here Malik Beasley is getting $27,000 worth of haircuts. And oh, by the way, he was sued for about $35,000 by his dentist in Minnesota. I think there was a song about this. Doesn't feel like that long ago, about how the more wealth you accumulate, the more issues you may have in your life. Feels like it might apply here. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, The Nuggets made another addition to David Adelman's staff, and he has something in common with one of his previous hires. We cannot ignore the signs of what the Denver Nuggets are low-key trying to do with the assembly of their staff. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this day before Independence Day. Hopefully you are well on your way to your holiday weekend, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join me, and appreciate you either listening or watching plus listening to the show, which you can do on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300 if you would like to be an active participant in the show. There are many means to be able to do that. You can call or text in 719-247-1313, or just hit me up on X at Gingerly Tweets. So while the Denver Nuggets are trying to keep one of their prized offseason acquisitions from leaving to go to Europe, Jonas Valanciunas, if you're just tuning in, has received a lucrative offer from a Greek team and is reportedly seriously considering it. That would not be good for the Denver Nuggets. So while they try to figure that out, they're also laying the groundwork for something. Josh Kroenke, in one of his many fireside chats after he fired Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, we've heard a lot from Josh Kroenke over the last few months. He talked about refocusing the organization on the 1, the 3, and the 5. Meaning, what do we want to do this year? What do we want to get done in 3 years? And what do we want to get done in 5 years? This team had become so focused on the right now that they kind of couldn't see the forest for the trees in a lot of ways. They weren't doing things, and I think this is a particular, I don't want to say jab, but perhaps one of the faults of Michael Malone was that he was so focused on winning every single night that maybe he lost the plot in some ways when it comes to player development or, the overall fitness of his team. But this Nuggets front office now has a clear view of what they want to accomplish in the next year, the next 3 years, and the next 5 years. You also have John Wallace, one of the new co-GMs, talking a lot about relationships and how much they matter in the NBA. And his relationships that he has across the league are part of what qualifies him essentially to have this job. And I do agree with him that relationships matter, maybe in the NBA more than any other sport. Some other sports you can certainly see. I think baseball is the best example of this. Dudes just take the most money all the time. That's what they do. They'll make it about winning or they'll make it about lifestyle. Like, look, Chris Bryant, there's no better example than Chris Bryant. Right? He made it about he wants to live in Colorado and da-da-da. The Rockies offered him a ton of money. Maybe more than he would get anywhere else. Baseball players always seem to take the most money. With the NBA, there are certainly guys that look to cash in at every turn, but it seems like relationships with coaches, with front offices, teammates, things like that matter. Jeff Van Gundy had a line once when it came to coaching. If they can't get you on results, they'll get you on relationships, right? Tom Thibodeau, Michael Malone, both perhaps fired, not because of the results, but because of the relationships. So relationships matter. And with that being a gospel truth of the NBA, I can't help but continue to notice what the Denver Nuggets are doing with their coaching staff. They have brought in J.J. Barea, and now they have brought in Jared Dudley. And Jared Dudley will now become the lead assistant under David Adelman. Now, you could look at it and say, Dallas was a very successful team. They had made the NBA Finals just a couple of years ago. Jason Kidd's a good coach. So Jared Dudley and J.J. Barea are qualified, capable assistant coaches. And I have no reason to think that they're not. And I'm sure what they are being hired for, first and foremost, is their basketball acumen. But they also come with additional prizes. Like the fact that when a young Slovenian player came over to the NBA back in 2018, J.J. Barea was his mentor. J.J. Barea was the guy that helped this young 18-year-old Slovenian kid acclimate to the NBA, acclimate to the United States in the city of Dallas. And that 18-year-old Slovenian kid over the next few years would rise to prominence as one of the best players in the NBA. And this year, he was dealt in a shocking trade. And one of the last pieces of video of Luka Doncic in a Maverick with the Dallas Mavericks, he wasn't playing because he was hurt, if you recall, was him chatting up Jared Dudley. The Nuggets, if they think they're being sneaky, they're not. I see it, and you see it too. JJ Barea and Jared Dudley might be bright basketball minds, and I don't want to diminish at all their ability to do the job they're being hired to do. But it cannot be a coincidence that these are the choices that David Adelman is making. It can't be a coincidence when Luka Doncic is set to become a free agent in 2 years' time. I'm sorry. I refuse. The Nuggets David Adelman can say that's not a consideration all he wants if somebody asks him about it. I don't believe him. What is part of the reason that Jalen Brunson is in New York? His father is an assistant coach. And by the way, is reportedly remaining on Mike Brown's staff. Now, JJ Barea nor Jared Dudley are Luka's flesh and blood. But the transition going from Europe to the NBA as an 18-year-old, that's a culture shock. That is a major life change. And the people that help you along, there's some loyalty there. Certainly there's affinity there. And if Josh Kroenke is aligning this front office and this organization to keep an eye at all times, not just on what they want to do this year, but what they want to have accomplished in 3 years' time and 5 years' time, absolutely part of it is angling for Luka Doncic. And this is not a new phenomenon. The Nuggets would hardly be the first team to do things in terms of their hiring practices, in terms of their salary cap, to put themselves in a position to land a top free agent. Teams have done this with LeBron. They have done this with Kevin Durant. So this is not new. And this is not something that is foreign to the NBA. It happens a lot. It's just good organizational management. If you have the ability to be competitive right now, which the Denver Nuggets have accomplished with the moves they have made, with or without Jonas Valanciunas, the Nuggets have still had a good offseason. They have positioned themselves to have a better chance at chasing another title than they were a year or 2 years ago. But meanwhile, you look at the Nuggets and how their salaries are set up. The only players that they have under contract, the year that Luka his new contract, his next contract would kick in, Jokic, Murray, Gordon, Deron Holmes, and I'm missing one, Julian Strawther, I think. Jokic, Murray, Gordon, Zeke Naji. still set to be under contract. How about that? What a group. One of these things is not like the others. Those are the only players that the Nuggets right now will have under contract. It won't stay like that. They have decisions to make on Peyton Watson and Christian Brown in the meantime. But you cannot tell me that the Denver Nuggets don't have one eye on what is going on in Los Angeles. Luka didn't ask to go to LA. He was sent there. He was thrust into it. So there is no guarantee that he's going to want to play the prime years of his career in LA. And the Nuggets just so happen to have the flexibility to be able to take on a salary such as Luka's. They could trade Jamal Murray for Luka tomorrow. Now, I'm not saying the Lakers do that. They would be insane to do that. They'd have to be Nico Harrison to do that. And maybe worse. But the money works. The roster, with the flexibility they'll have, and they'll have more flexibility moving forward, it works. And now they just so happen to have one of Luka's closest colleagues that the two of them have openly talked about wanting to play together. And now at Nikola Jokic's side are the guy that helped Luka Doncic get acclimated to the United States of America and JJ Barea, and another guy that Luka Doncic is listening to people out of Dallas quite fond of in Jared Dudley. In fact, I saw an interview with Jared Dudley where when he was still playing, he said Luka was the player that he most wanted to play with. You don't think that affinity that Jared Dudley had towards Luka when he became an assistant coach with the Dallas Mavericks, you don't think that translated? It did. Let's not ignore what is plainly in front of our faces. It may not happen, right? It may not. In fact, I would say that the percentages are against the Denver Nuggets ever having Luka Doncic on their team. But if you can hire capable assistant coaches who just so also happen to have a deep connection with one of the 5 best players in the world that just so happens to be on the clock in terms of becoming a free agent, you do that. It's bonus. And I know everyone's talking about the other guy in LA, including me, and what they do or don't do in this offseason mattering to him. They're building this team. The moves that they're making, they hope to be able to appease LeBron, but they're building the roster for when Luka fully takes the reins. So the moves that the Lakers make, maybe LeBron is the one openly monitoring it. You don't think Luka is? You don't think Luka is taking an interest in what Rob Pelinka is doing as he starts to think about the fact that he's going to be a free agent soon? Now, DeAndre Ayton fits very well with Luka, a rim running big. Now, does it make the Lakers any closer to being a title contender? Absolutely not. But it's a type of player that fits well with Luka. So even with this Ayton deal, they've done a little bit of that looking ahead to when they hope Luka is the lone franchise player on the roster. This offseason may be more important in terms of LeBron's future in LA, in the immediate future. But Luka is who they're trying to build around. And if they are unsuccessful, if this year they're not even close to Houston, Minnesota, Denver, if they don't make the moves necessary, if they don't get anything back for LeBron James, the Nuggets will be waiting. I can say that much with absolute certainty. 719-24-7, 1313. Take your thoughts on the Nuggets. Maybe not so low-key angling for Luka. And we'll continue on with this Thursday edition of the show after this. Celebrate the Switchbacks Independence Day fireworks spectacular with a 360-degree immersive experience from the field after the Switchbacks take on Louisville City. Be there at 6 p.m. as the first 2,000 fans through the gates will get limited edition Switchbacks bucket hat powered by Pikes Peak National Bank. Tickets will sell out, especially now that we are a little bit more than 24 hours away from the match. Get your tickets at switchbacksfc.com. Vinny Benedetto of the Gazette, who covers the Denver Nuggets, friend of the program, just put something up on Gazette.com where he was able to find another example of a player going through what Jonas Valanciunas is contemplating, which is leaving the NBA, signing with a team in Europe, and using that other player who you and I have never heard of. I'll tell you his name. It's not super important. Sasha Vezenikov. Just happened last year, apparently, with the Toronto Raptors. Because there would be a buyout, Vezenikov forfeited nearly $7 million of salary. So is Jonas Valanciunas, who's set to make over 10 next year, just willing to give that up? And I don't know. I don't know if that is all. I mean, you'd be forfeiting that. Does that count as the buyout? And here's the thing. It could get a little bit ugly if the Nuggets fight back here and be like, no, dude, you're not leaving. Sasha Vezenikov, with all due respect, I can't imagine that Masai Ujiri was having sleepless nights because Vezenikov wanted to leave. So is simply forfeiting the salary good enough? I don't know. But that's over $10 million that Jonas Valanciunas is giving up. And, oh, by the way, a chance to compete for an NBA title, which he has done before, but I would imagine he'd like to do again. I just keep coming back to, was this in the works when he was with Sacramento? And could he have potentially had a change of heart in the last 48 hours when he got traded to the Denver Nuggets? I got to imagine this was certainly for the former. I would almost guarantee that he was approached while he was still a Sacramento King. I mean, this is day 4 of free agency. This had to be in the works before. It looked like a cost-cutting move by the Sacramento Kings. Could they have known something about this and kind of went, let's get something in return? Although it's Dario Saric, how much did they get in return? But I mean, this is a good gig. Right? And Jonas Valanciunas has the chance to be a real difference maker for this Denver Nuggets team. I think that's what the Nuggets are going to have to talk with him and his representation about. Like, hey, man, we want to bring you in because we want to make you an important part of our team. and we're chasing a championship. Jonas Valanciunas hit next year's, and maybe what they do is they agree to some sort of an extension. Maybe they guarantee the second year of his deal. I would imagine there would be some kind of a negotiation between the Nuggets and Valanciunas to try and get him to stay. Is just telling him about playing with Jokic and them chasing a title enough? Or are they going to have to do something financially to hang on to him? And that's assuming that any buyout, that Jonas Valanciunas is fine giving up the money in his contract, and that would either totally satisfy the buyout or this Greek team would be willing to pay whatever the buyout would be. But clearly, I mean, it's not like this provision of having to buy out a player is new to, like, you think that the Greek, the people who run that Panathinaikos are not aware of this, and yet they were pursuing him. Would certainly be a bit of a bummer. But again, I go back, Al Horford. Al Horford's available. But I think Jonas Valanciunas is the favorite acquisition of Denver Nuggets fans. My favorite is kind of Tim Hardaway Jr. Because I just think he checks, in some ways, a more significant box for the Denver Nuggets. Like, I know finding a backup for Jokic was important, but like the 3-point shooting, I go back to that Oklahoma City series, and being able to throw out a reliable 3-point shooter like Tim Hardaway with some of the looks that the Denver Nuggets got, that might actually be my favorite addition. But Bruce Brown, a lot of people are loving that. I'll put it to you, 719-247-1313. Which of these acquisitions, including Jonas Valanciunas, has been your favorite? I think the most consequential is Cam Johnson because of the role he's going to play for the Denver Nuggets and what acquiring him has opened up. Without the Cam Johnson deal, they may have gotten Bruce Brown. They would not have gotten Jonas Valanciunas. And maybe they would have gotten Tim Hardaway Jr. But if everyone loves the Jonas Valanciunas trade, which I do as well, for the Denver Nuggets, that doesn't happen unless the Nuggets acquire Cam Johnson and ship off Michael Porter. But getting a guy who can knock down threes like Tim Hardaway Jr. And I could see a world if the Nuggets aren't wanting to pay Christian Brown $30 million a year, and we're seeing this in LA right now, like the Lakers are not bending to Austin Reeves' demands. I don't think it's in the Nuggets' best interest to sign Christian Brown for $30 million. I don't think he's. You just got this space and this flexibility, and you're going to basically give Porter's money to Christian Brown or Cam Johnson for that matter. It would not be as significant of a raise for Cam Johnson, but I just don't think that the Nuggets should be in that business. You know, Tim Hardaway Jr. is only on a 1-year deal, but if the Nuggets cook up something big in the next calendar year, they may need to use Christian Brown as a trade chip. And a year, I think Tim Hardaway's got more than 1 year of basketball left in him. So I really like the Tim Hardaway addition. And it also came in on the heels of trading for Jonas Valanciunas, and it was like another hit, like, oh, and they got him. Well, what was your favorite addition? 719-247-1313. I would guess Jonas Valanciunas would be that for most people. Take a break. We're continuing to keep our eye on this Jonas Valanciunas situation. Is he departing the NBA or is he going to be a Denver Nugget? Probably won't be resolved today, but we'll keep an eye on it just in case here on Extra Sports 1300. $1,000 with the red, white, and win. This national contest can be entered by going to extrasports1300.com, and it's sponsored locally by H&H Tires and Window Nation. Nuggets Summer League roster has been announced, and there are some names. Who was it that stuck out? Reese Beekman played at the University of Virginia. Keontae Johnson, who is a part of Kansas State. So those names stuck out to me. But this Summer League, if you're looking at who to watch, it's obviously number one, Deron Holmes. And, of course, while he's getting ready to compete in Summer League, he suffered his injury. So he's going to be the main attraction for the Denver Nuggets. But this two-way player they signed in Tamar Bates, the rotation for the Nuggets just got a little bit more crowded, so I don't expect Tamar Bates to be a regular contributor to the Denver Nuggets, but he's an interesting player, and clearly the Denver Nuggets liked what they saw in him. They signed him to the two-way. A lot of these other guys are just getting, kind of that opportunity to be on the Summer League team. So couple names to watch out for when the competition gets going in Vegas. Cooper Flagg is going to be the main attraction, but all of these guys that were just drafted, Ace Bailey and the plethora of guards that the Brooklyn Nets just signed up, Bronny. In fact, they're opening Vegas Summer League with Bronny versus Cooper Flagg. And also on the Lakers, here locally, Bronny will not be the Laker that most people are watching. It will be Ethan Taylor, former Air Force Falcon, getting an opportunity with the Lakers Summer League team. And I had heard for a while now that Ethan Taylor, of anyone on that Air Force team, that Ethan Taylor was the one garnering the most attention from NBA scouts, and it makes sense. Big fan of Ethan's game. One thing that he does, and it's a bit of an oversimplification, but he affects the game in a number of ways. He rebounds well as a guard. He facilitates. He can score. And I think those are the types of guys that NBA teams like to have to fill out their roster and see, are one or two of these skill sets translatable? Can we hone in on one or two of these skills and develop them to a player that we want on our roster? So I could see, watching him at Air Force, why NBA scouts would be intrigued by Ethan Taylor. Maybe not the team that Falcon fans would most like for him to compete with in Summer League, but hey, the dude's getting a shot at the NBA. Not many guys can say that. So very cool. So when you tune in for Cooper Flagg, just know it's not Cooper Flagg versus Bronny. It's Cooper Flagg versus Ethan Taylor. And then there's this, and I have been accused in the past of only bringing up our country's national soccer team when something bad happens, which is not true. I celebrated the hiring of Pochettino, and I talked about the rumors with Jurgen Klinsmann. Those were positive stories. But with the U.S. going to the Gold Cup final, I mean, it was just not that long ago, like a week ago, where it just felt like business as usual, and maybe even somewhat worse with the U.S. men's national team. Some of their bigger names did not, Christian Pulisic, did not want to compete in the Gold Cup. And the bickering back and forth between the old heads, which I shouldn't use that term because I am around the same age as Tim Howard and Landon Donovan. But the bickering back and forth between the current U.S. men's national team members and the former, and it just felt like very high school and felt like, oh, this is not going to get better even in a year's time for when the U.S. hosts the World Cup. And then the competition started, which is the best remedy, right? The build-up is where you get the bickering, and then once the competition really got going, it became about the soccer. But that only holds your attention for so long if the team struggles. U.S. is not struggling. They won in a shootout in the quarterfinals. Last night, Diego Luna, who used to play against the Switchbacks for El Paso Locomotive, he's the hero last night with 2 goals. And I think Diego Luna is kind of perfect, is the perfect player to be the hero last night for the U.S. as they advance to the Gold Cup final. Because he's kind of in Christian Pulisic's spot. And I think one of many issues, if we're being fair about it, that plagues the U.S. men's national team is that because this group, Adams and Pulisic and these guys have been dubbed our golden generation, like the greatest group of the most talented group of American soccer players we have ever had. Whatever we're going to accomplish on the world stage, it's going to be because of them. And that kind of creates a sense of entitlement, a sense of maybe I'm bigger than the club, bigger than it's not club, bigger than the national team. And when you have players that took the hard road, like Diego Luna, and it's not that Diego Luna really came out of nowhere, but he played in the USL Championship, playing in MLS. He's not one of these guys like Pulisic who's getting big offers from big clubs in Europe. And for him to contribute in the way that he did, you hope it kind of sends a message. Or you hope that Mauricio Pochettino uses it as a message to say, like, hey, look, I'll play this dude. I don't care. He had a brace in sending us to the Gold Cup final. I'm good. I'll play Diego Luna. I'm going to play the best players. And some of that was a little bit missing under Berhalter. Although he kind of drew a line in the sand with one player in particular. But this is where having a manager as accomplished as Mauricio Pochettino helps, because the messages that he delivers, they land. He speaks with authority. He's managed big clubs. He's won things on the highest of levels. And when he can use Diego Luna's performance as a, look, he's in form right now, I'm going to roll with him. I don't care what you were dubbed, what you've done. I'm coming in here and I'm going to play the best 11. I think that lands. And I think this might be a message to some of the players that we thought would be, not that any of them are going to get left out of the World Cup team, but just the guys that we've expected to feature in the World Cup. Just the fact that maybe those spots are not a foregone conclusion. That there really are players. I mean, that's the most important thing. Is that we're seeing a player step in and step up in Diego Luna. That's the most important thing, because Pochettino can say whatever he wants. If they look around the team and go, yeah, no, you could say that all you want, dude. No one's beating me out. Well, when you get some of the contributions that the U.S. has gotten in this tournament, especially the last two matches, I don't know. Maybe they have a little bit, since depth is the en vogue word when it comes to sports right now. Depth. Maybe the U.S. has a little bit of depth. Obviously, hopefully they finish the job. And hopefully someone that we're not really thinking a lot about is the one that steps up and plays the role of hero. The way that the conversation has turned when it comes to the U.S. men's national team over the last few days has been quite interesting. And it should. Like, these last two matches have been fantastic. In terms of the result, I would say their performance last night was better than it was the previous match. I'll say that. But the results have been fantastic. The heroics of some of these players, it's been great to see. And one of the last big competitions until the World Cup. And if you're going to compete with teams coming from South America and Europe, you better at least take care of business in CONCACAF. And that has been not always the case for the U.S. men's national team, as you well know. But good for Diego Luna. Good for the U.S. men's national team. 719-24-7. 1313. Coming up next, we'll reset things with the three stories that are driving the show. It's been actually not that we were planning on it or all of the news is positive. In fact, most of the news today in regards to Colorado teams, not so positive. But a lot going on. I don't know how much is going to be going on through the holiday weekend, but we're got a lot to discuss, and we will continue to do so. And I welcome your thoughts. 719-24-7, 1313. Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show, which is eerily similar in format, length, basically in every way. What I talk about changes from day to day, but pretty much everything else is the same, whether it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday edition of the show. And I'm always glad to have you on any day of the week listening to the show on your radio, at extrasports1300.com or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Wellbeing for All. You can also watch the show on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300. If you'd like to participate, I know you're busy getting all those last minute things for your 4th of July. Maybe you're traveling. It's not a requirement. Just love to hear from you. 719-247-1313. Here are the three stories driving the show today. All right, story number one, the Jonas Valanciunas era in Denver may be over before it even starts.
3. Nope. Tipped up. Jonas! Got it! Second chance points, Valanciunas!
WRNO on the call. So a bit of shocking reporting coming out of Europe that Jonas Valanciunas is mulling a lucrative offer from Greek basketball team Panathinaikos that would take him away from the Denver Nuggets. Now, not without a fight. He is still an employee of the NBA and will be an employee in just a few days' time officially of the Denver Nuggets. So they would have to buy him out. And he would have to essentially forfeit the $10.5-ish million that he is going to make this upcoming year. But it's happened before. And I think the move that has excited maybe most Nuggets fans because of what he represents when it comes to the Nuggets bench and those non-Jokic minutes, that would certainly be a blow to morale if he were to leave. Now, I don't expect the Denver Nuggets to let him go without a fight. They see the same thing in Valanciunas that you do. But now they have this new front office has another thing on its plate that they were not maybe expecting to have, which is trying to convince a player to stay and not leave via free agency, but leave the country. So all this being reported by Basket News, a reputable outlet out of Europe. 13 years in the league, Valanciunas may be looking to, I don't know, be closer to family, be closer to home. I don't know what his motivations are, but the Nuggets have a pretty compelling case to make, I would think. Jonas Valanciunas, it's basically a one-year deal that he's on. Couldn't the Denver Nuggets go to him and say, hey, we brought you in because we think you can help us win a title. Will you chase that title with us and then go to Europe? I don't know how the Greek club will feel about it, but I got to imagine it would be compelling to Jonas Valanciunas because this had to come about when he was staring down the barrel of another season in Sacramento. His circumstances at work have changed for the better. For the much better. I got to believe the Denver Nuggets can convince him to stay for one season. But it's something to watch out for. And I don't know his motivations. I don't know how set he is in this move. And I don't know how far this basketball team in Greece is willing to go in order to secure Jonas Valanciunas' services. But there would be an impact on the Denver Nuggets, and not a good one. Now, reporting from Jake Fisher, Bleacher Report, and also Vinny Benedetto of the Gazette here locally say that this trade's still going to go through. So regardless of what happens with Valanciunas, the Nuggets would be rid of Dario Saric and his salary. But this was one of their, all of their additions, all four of them carry significance to them. Jonas Valanciunas maybe a little bit more than others. And I think the impact of this, if he were to leave, would be that the Nuggets, I would look at them and say they are not definitely the biggest threat to OKC that I think on paper they are right now. Now I got to consider Houston a little bit more. Got to consider Minnesota a little bit more. Because those non-Jokic minutes, it's a thing. And their bench was a thing and not a good thing. He was supposed to help that. Now, it doesn't take him out of the running for a championship. The Nuggets won a championship without really, with all due respect to DeAndre Jordan, without a great backup to Nikola Jokic. So it doesn't take them out of it. But again, I would have to really rethink the idea that the Denver Nuggets are definitely the biggest threat to OKC in the West if they were to lose Jonas Valanciunas. Hopefully that's not a reality we have to contemplate for too much longer, other than today, because the news today. So Jonas Valanciunas contemplating leaving the NBA. Can the Nuggets get him to stay? Meanwhile, the Colorado Avalanche finally got around to doing something in free agency.
Aho's up top. Burns sends it across the ring for Jarvis. 30 seconds left on the power play. Aho again. Tees it up. Save made. Rebound. Burns scores! A power play goal. And Carolina goes up 5-1.
99.9 The Fan in Carolina with the call. The Avs have acquired Brent Burns, longtime NHL defenseman, 21 years he has spent in the league, most recently, obviously, in Carolina. And if you recall, 25 years ago, there was a long-tenured defenseman, in fact, a 21-year vet of the NHL, that came to Colorado in search of Lord Stanley's Cup and found it. That was Ray Bourque. Got to imagine Brent Burns is kind of thinking history might repeat itself here. So the story of Brent Burns coming to the Colorado Avalanche is a fun one. And you already know who Gabriel Landeskog will hand the Stanley Cup to if the Avalanche are fortunate enough to hoist it. He's handing it to Brent Burns first. I promise you that. But how much can he help make that a reality? He is 40 years old. Even though when you see him on the ice, he is physically imposing, he does not use it. He is not a bruiser. He does not throw his body around to hit other human beings or to block pucks. What he does well is helping teams score goals. Good passer, especially on the breakout, getting from the defensive zone to the neutral zone. He can do that. Still got a little stick handling in him. Did score a handful of goals last year for Carolina. But I think if what Brent Burns becomes is a better version of Eric Johnson at $1 million, for 82 games. And Brent Burns will play 82 games. He's right now sitting on a streak of 962 of them, 925. I apologize. He'll get to 962. So it's a guy that will be available on the blue line, 9 in and 9 out for $1 million. You could do worse with $1 million in today's NHL. So you don't want to get too carried away. You don't want to think this is San Jose Sharks, Brent Burns. But this is a guy that can contribute in a depth role, and he slides in nicely right next to Sam Malinsky on the third D pairing. Smart, savvy bit of general managing from Chris McFarland. Not going to be a guy that puts them over the top, but he can contribute. We'll stick with the NHL and go to story number 3, and a big reason why perhaps the Avalanche had waited so long to make any additions to the club.
Back to where the line. Winnipeg will control. Right side point. DeMello pushed into where the corner, rolling off the boards. High slot. Ehlers went toward the net. Scores! Nikolai Ehlers has scored in 3 straight games.
The last big name of NHL free agency went off the board earlier this afternoon as Nikolai Ehlers signs a 6-year, $8.5 million per year deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. And it seemed like it was Carolina and Washington who it really came down to for his services. But late in the process, I say late, free agency is just a couple of days old. But after the initial wave of free agency, the Avalanche started to be linked to Nikolai Ehlers. I think the reason behind it is they haven't been able to get Marty Necas to sign a long-term extension. Could this be some kind of a plan B? You bring in Ehlers, you ship off Marty Necas. Now, the 8.5 AAV, I don't think would necessarily scare away the Colorado Avalanche. They would have to make a move, and I said they would essentially have to bring in Ehlers and ship out Necas in one foul swoop, but they could make that contract work. My guess is that the Avalanche, their desire is still to lock up Necas, and for Ehlers, if they were still going to try and make it work, he goes to Carolina where he will be a more prominent player for them. And regardless of what the Avs wanted to do with Necas, I think you could say Nikolai Ehlers could argue that he'd be a more prominent player. Although if they shipped out Necas, Ehlers would be playing next to Nathan McKinnon. But the Avs don't land him. So I think 2 things are going to happen now. I think you're going to see, because of the way free agency went and how quickly some of the bigger names like Brock Besser and Mitch Marner went off the board before teams could even really talk to them. Except Vegas. Funny how that works. I think you will see some moves being made. Significant moves. The beauty of them will be in the eye of the beholder. But I think because of how shallow the talent pool was to begin with in free agency, how some of the bigger names went off the board before free agency even began, I think you're going to see some teams go to a plan B. And I think that the Avalanche are now going to become more active than they had been. I don't know if Ehlers was the only iron in the fire, but it seemed to me like the Colorado Avalanche were looking at a more significant addition than some of these depth forwards who have gone off the board. But now they lose out on Ehlers. There's not another even decently big-named winger on the market. So the Avs now have 2 spots, at least in the bottom 6, that they got to take care of. And I expect the Avalanche to do that to some degree over the next week or two. But the bigger piece of business for them over the next few weeks is now to lock in with Martin Necas and try and get an extension done. Now, what is the reason for the impasse? Why has he not signed the deal yet? I think it's because Necas just kind of got there. And, he might not be 1,000% sold on Colorado, but I think more of what it is I think Marty Necas feels like he's going to have a big year, which should be good news to Avs fans in a way. And in a walk year, he has the chance to really up his value. So this idea of a hometown discount, it's not even his hometown. Mikko Rantanen spent more than a decade in Colorado. Marty Necas has been here for about 6 months. So I think this is Necas kind of betting on himself, trying, it's not to say that the Avs can't get an extension done with him, but I think the asking price is maybe higher than where the Avs want it to be right now. Where have you heard that before? But they got to get this done because now there's no plan B with Nikolai Ehlers that they can go to. If they're forced to trade Marty Necas just like they did Mikko Rantanen, they can expect to get lesser in terms of the best player they get back, probably a lesser player than Martin Necas. I think they brought him in not to turn around and flip him 1 year later. I think they looked at Necas and said, we can sign him long-term and we can put him in Mikko Rantanen's spot and we can come close to replicating what Mikko Rantanen did for us. It's kind of the same thing as Brock Nelson. I don't think that the Avs made these moves for Mackenzie Blackwood, for Martin Necas, and for Brock Nelson to just have them be rentals. And we've seen them lock up Blackwood. They signed Brock Nelson, and I fully expect them to do everything within their power to get Necas signed. And they can afford it. They're going to haggle over price. We know that. But you look at the Avs salary cap table, they can afford Necas at a more lucrative deal than Nikolai Ehlers got. And I think he'd be worth it. So immediate future, the needs, depth, wingers with the signing of Brent Burns, but a big storyline this offseason is whether there will be any movement towards Martin Necas signing up long-term with the Colorado Avalanche. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show, 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Pro Rodeo champions from the U.S. and Canadian circuits, plus national champions from Mexico, are coming to Colorado Springs next week for the NFR Open at the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo, July 8th through the 12th. And with payouts at over $1 million, the competition will be fierce. And you'll see the top talent in pro rodeo. And I would love to send you there. I have a 4-pack of tickets to the Friday matinee at the NFR Open. It will be Friday, July 11th, noon to 2. So if you want to play some hooky from work, hit me up. 13 texter to text rodeo and your name to 719-247-1313. We'll get a 4-pack of tickets to the NFR Open. Again, these are for the Friday matinee 1 week from tomorrow. One other important piece of the puzzle here with this Jonas Valanciunas story, contemplating leaving the NBA for Greece. Even though I have been saying his deal is essentially a 1-year deal, because it is, in terms of like the Nuggets can walk away from Jonas Valanciunas, but it's still worth $20 million, if that makes sense, right? It's essentially a 2-year deal. It's just that the second year is voidable. So I'm not pretending to be an expert on these kind of negotiations, but I got to imagine that the buyout would be $20 million, which is more, even though I don't quite understand the exchange rate, more than 12 million euros. So it would take multiple years for Jonas Valanciunas to recoup the money that he would be forfeiting by making this move. And then throw in the stuff about having a chance to win a championship and all that. But here's what's going to happen. Or at least what I think. So we're going to fast forward a year from now. And for whatever reason, the Nuggets are going to void that second year. Because isn't that how sports works? Right now, you're going to hear all this stuff about, it's $20 million. It's a 2-year deal. We got you for 2 years. And then he's going to be like, okay, I'll stay. And then 1 year, and then they'll void the second year. To either sign him at a lesser deal or because they got other things cooking, who knows? I'm just saying with sports, teams will do that. Ask for your fealty, your loyalty, and then turn around. And it's like Melo said the other day on social media about Damian Lillard. Now, wrong example, because Damian Lillard is reportedly thrilled that the Milwaukee Bucks bought him out. And why wouldn't you be? You're being paid a significant amount of money to not play basketball. He wants to play basketball, but he's going to be able to double dip. He's going to go to the city that he wants to go to. But Carmelo was talking about no loyalty in sports. Like, he's right. It's just the Damian Lillard thing may not be, the example you want to use. Maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. But the Nuggets need to get Jonas Valanciunas to not go to Greece. That's what they need to happen. Lakers have made another move as we continue. Even if you don't want the one guy from the Lakers, I think there are far more Nuggets fans that would want the other guy, the guy that they're building around in LA. And I talked about this earlier. The Nuggets naming Jared Dudley their lead assistant. Jared Dudley comes over from Dallas, just like J.J. Barea did. You have 2 assistants that worked for the Mavericks when Luka was there. J.J. Barea, the more significant of the 2, because J.J. Barea was kind of Luka's mentor and helped him transition over to the United States when he got drafted. Now, the main reason why David Adelman brought in these two guys is because they're good assistant coaches. But I'll use John Wallace, co-GM of the Denver Nuggets, his words. Relationships matter. Relationships are important. And Luka has a lot of relationships with people in the Nuggets organization. So let's call it an added bonus of bringing over Jared Dudley and JJ Barea. They want him for their basketball acumen. But there's also this other thing. So the Lakers make a move, another one. They signed DeAndre Ayton yesterday, and they bring back Jackson Hayes today. Remember when the Lakers tried to make Jackson Hayes a thing last year? Lasted one game. It was a great first game with Luka and Jackson Hayes. It's like, oh, okay. And then never again. But both of these guys fit Luka's game. Rim running bigs. They can catch lobs from Luka. So there's a clear archetype of center that the Lakers are looking at, and they got two of them. The problem is, I don't know that either of them, while they are fits, greatly improve the chances of the Lakers to be a factor in the Western Conference this year. Because Jackson Hayes got every opportunity last year to show that he was the guy he didn't. And they brought in DeAndre Ayton to be the starter ahead of him. And DeAndre Ayton is, I'll just say he has not realized his potential as a former number one pick. So these are not splashy additions, but they are basketball fits with Luka Doncic, and that's what the Lakers reportedly are doing. They are finding players that fit with Luka more than LeBron. But I think Luka wants to win. He got a taste of the NBA Finals. He wants more cracks at it. As of right now, I can definitively say he will not get a crack at the NBA Finals this upcoming season at least. Not with DeAndre and Jackson Hayes being the moves. But they fit. They fit with Luka. So that it's something. On the NHL side, I think you have to give some credit here to the Carolina Hurricanes in what they have been able to do. They were a punchline after the Mikko Rantanen debacle. They traded for Mikko Rantanen expecting to be able to sign him. For whatever reason, they couldn't. They had to ship him off for Logan Stankoven, and we had never seen anything like that in the NHL, and a lot of people were like, man, what is going on in Carolina? They made this huge bet, gave up a productive player in Martin Necas, gave up another piece in Jack Drury, only to turn around and trade Mikko Rantanen for Logan Stankoven, again, diminishing returns on the trade, right? Marty Necas is better than Logan Stankoven. But they go out and grab Ehlers. They sign Logan Stankoven to maybe the most team-friendly deal I've ever seen in the NHL. Logan Stankoven signed up for just above NHL minimum wage. I was stunned when Logan Stankoven agreed to a long-term deal like that. Like, Logan Stankoven's an up-and-coming player. Like, he might pop for Carolina, and he's locked in to a bargain long-term contract. But you got to give Carolina credit for that. They landed Ehlers. There were other suitors. They got him. He's not better than Necas, and he's certainly not better than Mikko Rantanen. But he's a good player. And then you look at the other players that the Carolina Hurricanes have locked down. They signed former CC Tiger Jacob Slavin to a long-term deal. They got Seth Jarvis locked up. I've always liked the Carolina Hurricanes. I like the way they play. I know a lot of people hate it. I love Rob Brindamore. Like, I'm from afar, I'm a fan of the way they play hockey, a lot of their personnel. And they have done a decent job of recovering. I would say more than a decent job of recovering after what had to have them reeling when Mikko Rantanen's like, yeah, I don't want to sign here. So Carolina, not as big of a threat to Florida as they would have been had they had Mikko Rantanen, but they're in that mix. They're in that mix. We haven't really seen Toronto do anything, in the wake. They signed up, they extended Matthew Nyes, but they lose Mitch Marner. And I'm not sitting here saying that it is totally the wrong decision, but you still got to replace the guy. Still got to do things. And it's like there's Florida, and it just feels like Florida's so far ahead of everybody else. Oh, and Carolina got Keandre Miller. Forgetting. So it just feels like Florida's so much better than everyone else. I don't know that they're light years ahead of everybody, and it's going to be even more taxing on them. It's going to be even more difficult for them to three-peat. But they have the personnel to do it, certainly. And then after that, it's like just a bunch of teams. Not that those teams aren't good. It's just, what are you going to use to separate them? Toronto lost Marner. Didn't get Marchand. Didn't get Sam Bennett. Like, New Jersey got some depth pieces. They re-signed Cody Glass. They got, I believe they brought in Jake Allen. So you just kind of look at the East, and there are some teams like you like some aspects of them, but you don't love them. And with Florida in that conference, it's hard to look at any team and truly love them, because Florida is loaded. And they got every piece of business done that they needed to this offseason. And yes, they're going to be paying Brad Marchand till he's like 65 years old. But hey, it's this year, man. Kudos to Florida. You go for that 3P, and you worry about the dark days when you got to pay Brad Marchand all that money and he's into his 40s. You worry about that later. It's about this year for the Florida Panthers, and Bill Zito got everything done that he needed to keep this team together. But if we're talking about, in the NBA, who's the biggest threat to the Oklahoma City Thunder, doesn't mean that you expect the Thunder to get toppled, but somebody's got to be their biggest threat. As long as Valanciunas is there, I think it's the Denver Nuggets. But on the NHL Eastern Conference, why can't it be Carolina? And I know that series did not go well for Carolina, but they were just there against Florida. And I like the moves they made. And considering what happened with Mikko Rantanen, gotta give them a lot of credit. They might be, certainly in the East, the big winners of NHL free agency. K'Andre Miller, Nikolai Ehlers locking up Stankoven. I guess Florida's the biggest winner, but Carolina's certainly one of the winners of NHL free agency. And we'll see if there are a bunch of moves coming up as teams that thought they would be able to bid on Brock Besser, thought they would be able to bid on Brent Marchand or Sam Bennett or Mitch Marner. See if some moves are made and see if they're moves of significance. Again, the Avs, they need more than anything else other than a long-term extension for Marty Necas. They need some depth wingers. They might have some options internally. Taylor McCarr, Oscar Olesen. They might have, maybe it's like they go out and get one and they essentially promote one. And don't forget, they get, and now I'm forgetting his name. Apologies. It's almost the holiday weekend. But the prospect they got back from Columbus, like in the trade of Charlie Coyle, Miles Wood, like he could be in that mix too. Young guy, played all of one NHL game. Like I don't know if he's ready, but he could factor into their plans as well. But at the same time, why did you open up the cap space when you did? What were the Avs up to? Was it thinking they would be able to bid for Ehlers? Was it really that? But like they could have waited, and with all these pending UFAs that ended up staying where they are or getting traded like Mitch Marner, is like maybe there might be a better market for Charlie Coyle. So was it just, I mean, that's going to be a lingering question. And I guess the only way we'll know is if the Avs end up doing something significant. But I just feel like you opened it up to do something. And it wasn't to, bring back Jonathan Drouin. You don't open up that kind of space to get a third line winger. Maybe it was Ehlers. Maybe that's just what it was. They thought, you know what, we can bid on this guy. I got to think they had a couple of irons in the fire, and we'll see if anything happens with them. But the timing of opening up that cap space, yeah, there's a practical reason you're going into free agency. But again, what were the Avs looking to bid on? Not Mitch Marner. Marchand and Sam Bennett were locked up. Something else. I know it. There's something else that I don't know what it is. And maybe it was Sidney Crosby. And it could still be Sidney Crosby for what it's worth. But I can't just shake the timing of them opening up that cap space and how limited options were available via free agency. It might have been to have a chance at Ehlers. I don't think Chris McFarland's a guy that makes a move like that looking at one player. We'll see. Now that free agency is basically done, a lot of people expect to see some trades. 719-247-1313. Come back and wrap it up after this. Albert texts in at 719-247-1313 regarding the Jonas Valanciunas situation in Denver. He may be looking to bolt to Europe. Albert says maybe Sacramento wasn't so dumb after all. We never know all the different factors facing the GMs, owners, and players, but in the end, it's almost always the money trail that shows the truth. And I said this earlier that, the move of trading Jonas Valanciunas for Dario Saric was a salary dump. Again, the big bad tax, apron, all of this kind of stuff. It was a cost-cutting move. And we've seen the Sacramento Kings go out and get Dennis Schroeder. They've been involved in trade rumors regarding Jonathan Kuminga. But maybe this was a part of it. I don't know if they could make all of this other stuff work if they still had Jonas Valanciunas at $10.5 million. Maybe they could have. I don't know. But it was perceived as a cost-cutting move. Perhaps they were aware of this and figured we're going to lose him anyway. We might as well dump his salary and get something in return. And I know Dario Saric as a player doesn't qualify as that, but he's being rumored to be a part of these bigger trades, like getting Jonathan Kuminga to Sacramento. Like, you need to make money work, right? And Dario Saric opted in. About $5 million. That's $5 million you could put towards the total trade value that you are sending out. And there are rumors that Dario Saric might end up back in Golden State as a result of this deal. But to Albert's point, Valanciunas was looking at a pretty big payday, whether it's with the Denver Nuggets or the Sacramento Kings, but would be essentially on the hook for $20 million. You don't think he knew that before? So I just, the idea that the money is going to keep him in Denver, I don't believe it. I don't believe that it will ultimately be the money that keeps him. Oh, I don't want to do the buyout. This is not something that just got offered to him today. I don't believe that. And if he has a decent agent, they're going to explain to him what that means. So clearly he was on some level okay with it. Maybe that's one of the reasons he hasn't done it already. Well, maybe he is hesitating a little bit because of the buyout. But if he, I'll go back to where I did early in the show. Yeah, the money matters, but the players, these players, more often than not, get what they want. If Jonas Valanciunas wants to take this contract from this club in Greece, he's going to. And they're going to figure out the buyout. But I think what you hope as a Nuggets fan is that this was percolating when he was in Sacramento, and now that he's in a much better situation in Denver, that's another thing for him to reconsider this. See what happens over the weekend. Tomorrow night, Switchbacks are in action against Louisville City. And for you fans that are going to the games, this is a big one. I would call this a showcase match for the Switchbacks. Is it a match that ultimately decides their fate this season? No. But we have these in every sport, right? We've talked about this with the Denver Nuggets in the past, right? There are certain games that even if they're earlier on in the season or midway through the season, they mean a little bit more than games typically do at whatever juncture of the calendar we're talking about. This is one of them for the Switchbacks. Defending champions trying to find their way a little bit this season, but they're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination. Plenty of soccer to be played, but tomorrow night is a showcase game against an absolute wagon of a team in Louisville City. They had the best record in the league last year. They have a pretty full trophy case. This is the only game in town. I'm not just talking about Colorado Springs. I'm talking about in the USL Championship. They're putting it on national television. This is a chance for the Switchbacks to show we're still that team. The results may not say that we're the team that hoisted the cup last year, but we are still every bit that team. And we're going to go toe-to-toe with probably the team that most people think is going to hoist that trophy this year. I talked to the players, James Chambers, the head coach today. They feel like they're close. They're close to putting it all together. Tomorrow night would be great timing. Show that you're still that team. Send a message throughout the league that the Colorado Springs Switchbacks are still here. That's what's on the line tomorrow night. Win, lose, or draw, it's not going to ultimately decide whether the Switchbacks are in the postseason or not. It's an Eastern Conference team, but it's one of those showcase games that a lot of people interested in that league are going to be watching, including other teams in the league. Big stage for the Switchbacks to put it all together on, and hopefully they do it tomorrow night. Kickoff is at 7. Roland and I will be on the air at 6:30. Even if you're going to the match, you could still download the Extra Sports 1300 app and listen to us. Maybe I'll see you there. But whatever you're doing this 4th of July weekend, enjoy it. And, maybe talk to you tomorrow night here on Extra Sports 1300.